For more, let's bring in Briahna Joy Gray. She's the former press secretary for Bernie Sanders' 2020 presidential campaign. Briahna, welcome. Great to have you with us. So many analysts are saying that this particular vice presidential debate holds more weight than in years past. And of course, there is no arguing, as Caitlin and I were just mentioning, both President Trump and Joe Biden are older gentlemen. Those are the facts. If he wins, Joe Biden could very well be a one-term president. But there are also still so many unknowns when it comes to the coronavirus. So what are you most looking to hear tonight from Senator Kamala Harris?
I think what the polls reflect and recent data shows is that the most effective way to pitch swing state voters is to talk about core economic issues and health issues. So issues like Social Security, expanding Medicare, these are what voters are really responding to. And what doesn't work among those persuadable swing state voters is direct attacks against Trump. So what is really interesting is that what we saw from Kamala Harris in the primary was that her most notable moments were these moments where she took a direct attack on another candidate, most notably and memorably on Joe Biden. And those attacks didn't really land especially well. Remember that after a brief spike, her numbers declined and she eventually was forced out of the race prior to California without anyone ever having an opportunity to vote for her. So having recently rewatched the VP debate from 2016, it's interesting to really realize that Mike Pence is this calm, steady presence that is a counterbalance to Donald Trump. And I suspect that he will try to claim the ground of sincerity. And what I hope from Kamala Harris is that she doesn't see that ground and doesn't try to move forward with any kind of glib, quippy statements or stunts or pre-written lines, the type of which will really undermine voters' feeling that she is sincere and genuine in her commitment to making their lives better.
Okay, so what do you then believe that Senator Harris can really capitalize on tonight?
Well, it's obvious that Donald Trump is doing a terrible job with the corona response. And I think that Democrats being very specific about what they intend to promise the American people and what they will fight for is really important here. Notably, many folks feel that the Democratic establishment, that the party leadership hasn't done enough to fight for coronavirus relief, for recurring monthly payments, for instance. A lot of progressives were very critical of leadership, of Nancy Pelosi's decision to push through the CARES bill without getting relief for states and for individuals, right? And it represents the largest corporate giveaway, upward shift of money in American history. So I think if Democrats really want a slam dunk here, they will do what they have declined to do so far, which is to say this is concretely what I'm going to do for Americans who are suffering at unprecedented levels, and what Donald Trump won't do because of his own self-serving, egomaniacal ways.
So what then do you expect Vice President Pence to challenge her on, and how would you recommend that she responds to these likely challenges?
I expect Vice President Pence to point to the extent to which the status quo has been failing Americans, the extent to which Democrats, when they were in charge, haven't always pushed through the relief that Americans would like to see, obviously, before COVID-19. I mean, the thing that Donald Trump really ran on in 2016 was being a break from the status quo, was being independent. Now, that's much more difficult for him now that he is responsible for the last 4 years. But it's still going to be incumbent on Democrats to stick him with that record in a way that wasn't entirely successful in the last presidential debate. Even when the issues of taxes came up, Donald Trump remarkably pivoted to saying, I was able to take advantage of the tax code that Barack Obama enabled. So I think that Kamala Harris has to be very careful to be specific about the ways in which Trump has undermined the ability of Americans to get out of this unprecedented economic and health crisis. I think that she's also vulnerable, more so than Joe Biden, to the extent that she had a more progressive platform than he did. So that while Joe Biden has been able to say, I'm not a socialist, I'm not Bernie Sanders, don't try to stick me with any of these progressive programs, mind you, that a majority of Americans actually support. Kamala Harris was one of the earliest signers of Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All bill and ran on a more progressive to the left version of healthcare reform than Joe Biden actually has. So it's going to be more difficult for I believe, to wiggle out of the charges that are coming from the right. And I don't necessarily think that she should, as someone who obviously supports Medicare for all. I think that Republicans are right to call out this kind of hypocrisy because, in fact, Medicare for All is a kind of program that, if supported, would engender a lot more support. And the Republicans are successfully able to play the left and the center left off of each other when moderate candidates aren't willing to do the more progressive, more widely supported thing, like just supporting these basic programs.
Well, of course, Briahna, you worked very closely with Bernie Sanders on his presidential campaign. And as you mentioned, Joe Biden has not exactly embraced the more progressive elements of the party that were on display during the Democratic race. So do you think that Joe Biden, is at risk of alienating that wing of the party?
Look, the reality is that more Bernie Sanders supporters in 2016 supported Hillary Clinton at the polling booth than Hillary Clinton supporters supported Barack Obama when she lost in 2008. So that should make moderates feel good, the Democratic establishment feel good on one level. However, Joe Biden's choice to punch left at every opportunity really goes pretty far beyond anything that I have ever seen. And it's a really remarkable choice that demonstrates again and again that he believes that these kind of fictional Republican suburban voters who have never really materialized in any meaningful way are more important to the success of the party than progressives who, for instance, supported people like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders obviously won the second highest number of votes of anybody in this primary and is an enormously popular politician. And most importantly, the policies that he was running on are enormously popular. 88% of Democrats support Medicare for all. So when Joe Biden stands on a stage and says, "I'm not Bernie Sanders, I don't support Medicare for all, I beat the socialist," he's really struggling with younger voters, and a majority of voters under 30 think that socialism is a better form of government than capitalism. I think he needs to be really careful that he isn't going to demoralize, depress the vote among exactly those constituency groups that he's already flagging with. That's young voters and Latinos.
All right, Briahna Joy Gray, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time.
Anytime.
And you can stream the entire vice presidential debate tonight on CBSN. We will kick off our coverage with pre-show analysis at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Then immediately following the debate, join us as our panel of correspondents and contributors gives you an in-depth recap of the night. Then that starts at 11 p.m. Eastern. It's all right here on CBSN.